I'm Eddie Abraham, and welcome to yet another Media Watch segment. Tonight, we'll be analysing the media situation regarding the Vietnam boat scandal. Not only will we be talking about how it was portrayed in the media today, but we'll be looking at how it was portrayed during the Vietnam War.
Joining me now via Skype, Mark Goodcamp. He's in Sydney, where he is the spokesperson.
The first media source we analysed today comes from CNN's Kate Bolden, one of their head news anchors. She comes in contact with a 10 News reporter from Australia. They talk about the current asylum seeker situation, with asylum seekers coming from Vietnam. And the news reporter from Australia refers to the current policies and rules set by the Liberal Party as being stupid and ineffective. He says that even though the risk is so great for people to come to Australia, they aren't deterred, because what they're leaving behind, they see, is much worse. He is right in one sense, but a significant drop has occurred in asylum seekers since the Turn Back the Boats policy has come into play.
On your screen at the moment is a chart demonstrating the patterns that asylum seekers coming to Australia usually follow. As you can see, there are usually sharp rises in between 2-year periods. In 2008 to 2012, a dip begins to happen during the financial year. In 2013, it rises again slightly, but in 2014, a large dip has occurred compared to the rest of the patterns.
Has released a timeline referring to thousands of refugees that began to enter Australia during the aftermath of the Vietnam War. The Howard government introduced temporary protection visas for asylum seekers who have arrived unauthorised and are assessed by the Department of Immigration and Multicultural and Indigenous Affairs to become refugees. This policy was later abolished by the Rudd government in 2008, as he promised. Later that same year, Australia also ended its policy of sending asylum seekers into detention on small Pacific islands, with the last of the refugees leaving Nauru. Following the abolishment of this rule, more than 1,100 passengers and over 46 crew arrived back in Australia. This source was created by Special Broadcasting Services, or SBS, and shows the impact of Australia since the Vietnam War till today. This also shows the laws such as temporary protection visas, which was created by John Howard. These were created in order for asylum seekers to be called refugees, as they were assessed by the Department of Immigration and Multicultural and Indigenous Affairs. It also shows Pacific Solutions, which is where they sent asylum seekers to Pacific islands such as Nauru, rather than letting them stand on Australian soil.
One way in which the last few Australian Prime Ministers have all had in common, they've all been scrutinised in one way, shape or form on their asylum seeker policies. In April of 2013, the Daily Telegraph published an article in which they hailed the Fraser era as the golden era for Vietnamese refugees in Australia. Under the Fraser government, refugees were processed and the majority of them were shipped off. Perhaps this was the Daily Telegraph's pitch to keep Labor and their similar policy in charge after the 2013 Australian government election.
Specific mention to Abbott's party Turn Back the Boats policy, Foreign Minister of Indonesia, Marty Natalegawa, has again implied criticism against Australia's policy. In the newspaper The Age, Marty says that sharing responsibility, not shifting responsibility, is the way forward for Australia. He continues to imply many things in this article. This shows that Australia is being criticised heavily by the rest of the world on its policies. A group of asylum seekers has made claims that they were injured during an encounter with the Australian Navy. Now, Prime Minister Tony Abbott has replied to this with an attempt to sway Australia's opinion. Now, what he said was, who do you trust more, Australian Navy or people who are trying to break Australian law? In countries that have signed the UN's Refugee Convention, it is not illegal to come onto their territory and claim refugee if the people present themselves within a direct period of time and have a legitimate reason for needing refugee status.
If you all know, the Vietnam War had great impacts on Australian society. Thousands of refugees tried to seek refuge in this great country of ours. As we see in today's world, there are still people trying to claim asylum and refuge in Australia. Many of these refugees come from war-torn countries, but the majority arrive because they have nothing in their own country. These asylum seekers are called economic migrants. In all, around 2 million Vietnamese civilians fled South Vietnam after the Northern Communists had taken over the country. These 2 million refugees scattered out on small boats that were barely even seaworthy, and set course for any country that screamed freedom. The furthest most made was to far northern Australia. Many didn't even make it past the South China Sea. These people practically saw death on their voyages to freedom. They lived through hell and rose to heaven when they approached the free country. Life on the boats forced many into insanity or even death. As we look at the asylum seekers voyaging to Australia in today's society, we see that many that made the journey out of passion and eagerness, while there are others that just want to come here because they have nothing in their own country. Although the journey may be similar to the journey made by a refugee in the 70s, many people die for the sake of leaving their poor country, while others die of the threat of dying in their own war-torn country.